Hey, let's wrap it around. Thanks for tuning in. Behind the Bits doing probably the last interview I'm going to do for the year. So I'm pretty stoked about this. Kind of nice doing it at night instead of the afternoon. So I'm pretty stoked about that. Tomorrow I have the Don Smith episode coming out. He's part owner of Wiley's Comedy Club in Dayton. And he does a lot of acting, been in a lot of movies and some stuff that's on Amazon. And he's also a comedian. So that is out tomorrow. He's also the host of the Life podcast that's got like 1 million episodes. He's been out forever. It's a really good podcast. We've had a lot of the same guests. So that's tomorrow. It'll midnight. It's out. So, but today, for my last interview of the year, I think, my guest tonight is an attorney and a comedian. He is a regular at laugh factories and Zanies across the country and was named as one of the 40 best stand-up comedians by Stand Up Seats. As if that wasn't enough, he's also the host of Singles Only and Mixtape Podcast. Folks, it's Paul Farahvar. All I got to do is click a button here. There we go.
Hey, guys.
Over there. How you doing, Paul?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Let me see. You're Chicago, right?
In Chicago right now. Yeah, I just got back in town last week. I was doing shows in Florida and seeing the family there as well.
All right. Cool. So what I do for the opening bit here, I'll call it a bit, to get everybody interested, I pretend like I'm Mario Lopez on Entertainment Tonight and ask you all the stupid questions that everybody asks comedians. So I'm going to start with that. So first of all, where are you from?
I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, a suburb called Oak Brook, Illinois.
Okay.
But I've been in Chicago most of my life.
Okay, great. And let's talk about the first time you did stand-up. When was the first time you did stand-up?
So the first time I did stand up officially was at an open mic in Chicago at a venue called Merkel's. It was an open mic. They had a contest, and that was about, I believe, April will be 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I did the contest, and then they asked me to come back and host it. So I took it over, and we made
Oh,
it
wow.
into one of the longest running. It was a great open mic called Two and a Half Persians at Merkel's in
Uh-huh.
Chicago. Ran for a while. It was a contest. We had real crowds, so it was pretty fun.
That's something to say for an open mic.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was fun. Like we had we had we had guest hosts, or I'm sorry, guest judges, and the
Uh,
judges were always like attractive men and women that we knew who had a lot of followers. So then their friends would come, and then
right.
eventually the hosts or the judges ended up being bookers at comedy clubs. So a lot of comedians were doing like their best stuff at this open
Uh,
mic. So it's kind of funny where instead of people trying to write stuff or try new stuff, they'd end up doing their best stuff to try to get booked at Comedy Bar or Zanies or Laugh Factory. So it's kind of fun.
right. That's neat because you were using influencers before the name influencers came.
Yeah, we were ahead of the time. Me and my other host, Chris Bader, we were pretty smart about that. We were like, let's, because if someone, we gave them free alcohol or free food to
Right.
judges, and then I mean, it was an easy sell because they got to see 25 comedians do 3 minutes or 4 minutes,
Uh-huh.
and comedians forget sometimes. For us, open mics are work, but for other people, it's sometimes it's interesting,
Yeah.
especially if it's a hot room. So
Yeah. And it's different. I've done plenty of open mics where it's just me and the other comics, and I've done some where there's real audiences too, and
yeah,
it's a totally different vibe.
yeah.
And you don't want to try your new stuff when it's a nice audience.
Well, you should still try it. They say the
Yeah,
rule.
I know.
Obviously, when you have a hot crowd, you're like, man,
Yeah.
it's hard not to prove like, hey, I'm funny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you want to bring out the hits.
of course.
And yeah, I've done both and fallen on my face a few times both ways, so whatever.
All good.
So who were your influences as far as comedians? Who did you like growing up?
Well, growing up, I really loved Eddie Murphy and Chris
Mhm.
Rock. I didn't think I'd ever go into comedy. I just liked them a lot. My older brother got me into Eddie Murphy, and I actually found like old cassette tapes of Andrew Dice Clay. So apparently, I had a Dice stage as well. But
Mhm.
when I was really young, I liked Robin Williams as well.
Uh-huh.
But those are the comedians that I grew up watching. I grew up watching Eddie Murphy. I memorized all of his stuff, and same with Chris Rock. And then
Mhm.
when I started doing comedy, or right before I did comedy, I got more into I would say like Gary Gulman and Jim Gaffigan early on.
Mhm.
So those are like some of the comics I liked as well.
Right. Cool. Now, you are the second attorney comedian I've talked to.
Oh, okay.
So obviously the attorney thing probably came first.
Yeah. So I don't as of this year, I'm not practicing anymore. I still had a law firm up until
Okay.
March, but yeah, I still have a law degree and I still have a license to practice. I just don't do it anymore.
Uh-huh. So
Before,
you're headlong into the comedy.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Right before COVID, I closed my office and because I was booked up solid for shows, and then I had a job as a writer on another show, and so I was like, I can't really be responsible for clients. I felt it would
Right.
there and I get in trouble, so I closed my office, and then COVID hit, decimated my whole schedule and some of my opportunities. But then
Yeah.
it started opening up again, and now we're just back at trying to figure out what's going on. So.
Right. It does feel a lot like starting over, you know.
Yeah, it's a lot harder. In Florida, I was doing some shows. I was getting some momentum and getting a regular run of shows, and then you know it's hard for me, especially because I write on stage, and
Mhm.
it's harder for me to write, to all these new bits and the Zoom stuff. Zoom shows are fun too, but it's just not the same.
Right. It,
After you've done real shows for like a couple weeks,
yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I just did probably the first fun Zoom show I've done this weekend in a while. I've done Zoom shows. I can't say they're all fun, but there was actually an audience, just like the open mics.
Yeah.
So this question takes us off pace a little bit, but I always like to ask people if they're reading anything, listening to anything, just anything, podcast, magazine, anything that's giving you some inspiration. Do you have anything like that going on?
So I read a lot. I read a lot of biographies and autobiographies. The Tom Dreesen book you have behind you, I read
Mhm.
that last month. I had Tom on my show, Stuck with Paul. He's a good friend of mine, and I like reading books like that. I'm reading. I want my MTV right now.
Uh-huh.
The MTV era. Tom Papa's book. I read Judy Gold's book a couple weeks ago. And then I just bought Jerry Seinfeld's new book. Uh,
With all the bits.
yeah, I didn't know
Yeah.
what it was. I thought it was like, oh wow, he's going to tell about himself, but of course,
Yeah. No, he never does that.
yeah. So those are the kind of things I like to read. Those I'm reading. I like to read biographies of or not autobiographies of people, whether it's comedy or anything. I get inspiration from that because I like to hear people's journeys, whatever
Mhm.
it is that they've done. I've always been involved in reading biographies. So
Great. I'm glad you mentioned Tom because he was actually my first guest, and he's like my idol. I used to watch him on Mike Douglas and Dinah Shore and Carson, and he was like the first comic I ever really paid attention to when I was like 9 or 10 years old. And so all through the years, he's been my guy. And I like Letterman and all that too, but he's always been the one that I say that is my inspiration for comedy. And we had a conversation before I had him on the show, and I'm telling him a joke that he said on Mike Douglas, and I totally got it wrong. And he said, no, it goes like this. And he says, I haven't said this joke for 30 years, but this is how it goes. And so we did that, and then he agreed to be on the show. And I actually did a special show for him for the launch of his book too. So that was fun.
yeah, I got to open for him quite a bit when I first started. When I first got past the Laugh Factories in Chicago, and they had a Scottsdale location in Arizona,
Mm,
and I got to do some shows with him. He gave such great advice. He's so funny off stage too. People
yeah.
don't realize how he's such a clean comic.
Yes.
And off stage he's not, and it's fun to like you're like holy, you see this guy who's like your a father figure to you, and he's saying these
Yeah.
things. But yeah, he always gave me great advice, and I saw him uh, the first time I did a comedy show where he got standing ovation, where I saw the comedians get standing ovations at the end.
Hmm.
I've seen since, but that was
Yeah.
the first time I saw it on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
He
I
crushed.
got to see him do the Sinatra show right before COVID hit. So that was a
Oh,
neat
good.
show.
Yeah.
I It's funny you talk about how he is off stage. The show I was doing with him was a live show, and I brought a bunch of surprise guests into the room, and I didn't want to completely surprise him, so I
Sure.
brought them in before we went live, and he went on this rant and said all the words. I'm not going to say what he said because I don't want to attribute it to him. And I was just like, I wish I was recording this,
Yeah.
not to tell anybody, but just for me, so I could play it back.
It's funny because that a lot of those I've gotten to work with a lot of clean comedians, um, and it's so fun to just. I mean, it's always fun to hang out with these people that you look up to, and just be in the same room with them in a personal
Mm,
setting. But just some of the stuff you hear some of these comedians off stage say, you're like, wow, like I can't believe so and so is
yeah.
you know it's fun. And I've gotten the one great thing about doing comedy is just you get to do shows with, or even,
Yeah.
podcast or whatever, with all these people you look up to.
Yeah.
It's so, it's hard to not, as a fan of comedy, it's really hard to not, fan out sometimes. But
Right. And it's really great how Tom is great with everybody he talks to.
he's great.
He
Yeah.
Anybody that will talk to him and will listen, he'll take time for him. He's a cool guy.
So cool. And the book is great too. Highly recommend it.
It is. It is. I've read through it twice now. Yeah. That's why I've got it here by me all the time. I'm actually reading Rob Halford's autobiography, Confess, and that's one of the things from my teenage years I can't get rid of, being a Judas Priest fan, and
Yeah.
it's actually pretty good. I mean, he had actually a pretty good childhood, but he really had a family that they were just pretty much working poor, and the stuff that he went through is interesting, and the stuff he went through with the band is too. So it's a pretty cool autobiography.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I wasn't a huge Judas Priest fan. We had a guest on our Make Us a Mixtape podcast who was a big Judas fan, and I tried to
Uh-huh.
listen to it again. But I tend to listen to softer stuff
Yeah.
as a child.
Well, you had to have listened to it when you were like 16, or I don't think somebody that's an adult can go back and
Yeah.
listen to that catalog, and it has to be kind of a nostalgia thing for you.
Well, yeah, we talk. Marty DeRosa and I have a podcast, Make Us a Mixtape, where we talk about how whatever you listen to in high school, kind of like influences your music forever. Oh,
Yeah.
unless you like outgrow it. Like if you were,
Yeah.
a big stoner and you stop smoking pot, Grateful Dead's not going to make as much sense to you, or the
Right.
or whatever. But
I think the only band that I outgrew from my teenage years was the Doors. I had a Jim Morrison poster right by my Debbie Harry poster, and
yeah,
I just love the Doors. I listen to them all the time, and now if the Doors come on, I just turn it off. It's just
yeah,
I can't even listen.
we have a thing for that on the Mixtape podcast where there's certain songs where you've just hit your limit. It's like, okay, I can't. Whatever the number is, like 1,037. It's
Yeah.
like you've heard Morrison Hotel, the last. It's like that's it. I've had,
Yep.
and I feel the same way about a lot of Led Zeppelin and you know certain bands. I just can't, like Pearl Jam. I can't listen to that anymore.
Yeah. Now, have you ever done a Led Zeppelin bit though, saying that they're overrated and you don't like them?
No, but I did talk about them on the podcast, and we got a lot of hate mail.
I was gonna say I've tried a bit because I'm one of those too that I think
I
they're
like them. I just don't. I can't listen to them anymore.
yeah, I think they're okay. I think they were a good band and they did some good stuff, but they're totally overrated in my book. And then I tried to do a few jokes that way, and I'm going to get hate mail now, but
Yeah, yeah,
I tried to do some jokes that way, and I tried to soften them, and I got booed every single time. It just doesn't
yeah.
work.
You gotta. It's hard to pull something like that's just kind of one of those things. There's certain bits where you do them enough time where you know when it's coming, where you're gonna say something that's gonna anger people, and
Yeah,
you have to just fight through it. I mean, I do
yeah,
it right now where I know when I do it in certain areas, it's gonna get people pissed off.
yeah,
Um, but you just got to lean into it. You got
yeah.
to do it later in the set once you've already established it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just putting that in my list of stuff to do that I know pisses people off. And when I'm in a place where I know I'm not going to win, I'll just go through all that material and make them hate me even
Yeah,
more.
that's good too. Yeah,
A reaction is a reaction. If it's visceral and they throw shit at you, it's still good.
it's still good. That means they took the time to buy something to throw it at you.
Yeah. So the last question for the rapid round, what album or special would you consider to be your all-time favorite? And I let people do three since it's hard to pin down one.
I think that well, Eddie Murphy Raw was probably one of my favorites growing up. I haven't listened to it in a while, so I don't know how well it holds up, but I know that changed my life.
Mm.
Um, Chris Rock, Bigger and Blacker is another one. And then I would say I would say John Mulaney's New in Town,
Mm.
or the Great Depression with Gary Gulman. Those are all ones. I think you said three, but I picked four. So those are
Yeah,
the
that's
four
good.
I would say that are my favorites throughout my life, different different eras. Eddie Murphy was when I was super young, under
Mm.
middle school, grade school. Chris Rock was high school. Um, New in Town and Gary Gulman are now like my
Mm.
so
All good, all good choices. Good stuff. I think I'm just going to stay live. I,
okay.
I, I feel like staying live. People are coming in and out, so what the hell?
Fine.
So I wanted to talk to you about starting 10 years ago when you're still an attorney, and you wrote that your parents weren't too happy about the whole comedy thing. And what did your colleagues think about you doing the stand up?
Um, my parents are still in denial. They
Yeah.
still there. My A lot of lawyers. I didn't really have a lot of lawyer friends. I did music, but I was a musician too.
Hmm.
So I think everyone was kind of like curious as to see what would hold up, because I had different evolutions in my life where I was a musician and a band manager and booker, and then I
Hmm.
became a lawyer. Um, so people are like, all right, well, what's this new stage? So people were supportive. I think now colleagues, most lawyers want to get out, like they dream of leaving law.
Yeah.
Actually liked being a lawyer. It wasn't like I was burned out a little bit, but a lot of it was just this comedy just took over my life,
Mm.
and and so but yeah, I mean, generally speaking, most people were like surprised because it's a little different, but also lawyers, musicians, everybody kind of always wants, they always, lawyers definitely want to do comedy or music. Musicians want to be comedians, comedians want to be musicians. So those aspects of my life were kind of like envious and like rooting for me. They're
Hmm.
like, this is cool. Like, I wish I could do what you're doing.
Yeah. 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 It's a definitely a special talent. And so thinking about the fact that you did that open mic and then you ended up getting to be a host for it. So did a fair amount of success come to you fairly early then?
I felt like it did, just because I was so comfortable being on a stage. So I was already, what one booker said to me when they passed me at the club was, they said, you already are very comfortable on stage and you're
Hmm.
likable on stage, but you're not writing good, funny stuff. But we're still
Uh-huh.
going to see you because we think you will get there.
Yeah.
So those things were easier. So I got a lot of opportunities that way. And I was a good host. So a lot of comedy clubs need hosts.
Right.
And I liked being a host. I preferred being a host to, just writing material, because as a host you can go weave in and out of a crowd and do whatever you could. So I think I got a lot of opportunities that way. My home club, Laugh Factory, made me they knew I wanted to host, so they made me the host of the Laugh Factory's open mic,
Hmm.
um, which was a weekly gig. It was awesome. It was fun, and then I started hosting on regular there. Um, so I think I got a lot of opportunities because of the fact that my background as a musician, my background as a trial lawyer, helped me be comfortable on stage,
Right.
before other people, I think, would be. Um, but then I think, like, once I got to a certain level, I felt like I didn't. It took me a long time to become a headliner.
Yeah.
I'm just now getting more opportunities as a headliner.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's one thing I noticed that the thing that new comics work on the least is their delivery and their stage presence because they don't know what that is yet. And being a professional and really if you've got any amount of life experience, then the stage is a little bit more familiar to you because you just been through stuff, and I guess that's young comedians. I would recommend that you look at what comedians do and pause it and look at it again and pause it and look at it again to understand what real stage presence is. And that's like 90% of it when you're starting.
Yeah, I think I was fortunate enough where I had that, uh, not maybe not the stage presence that I developed later, but I had a lot of the things that put me ahead of a lot of people that were 2 years in, like I was early on, and then the writing kind of you find your voice as you perform. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think I would say I came out really strong and I got a lot of opportunities early, but then I was stagnant for a long time too.
Yeah.
Where the
Yeah.
level from feature or to get to the headline level, it took a while, and then
Yeah.
COVID
And
hit.
being a feature used to be a really comfortable position too.
Oh, it's the greatest position in the world. It's
Yeah.
the easiest job. I mean, I'm a feature for I get to feature for a lot of bigger names, so it's kind of fun.
Uh-huh.
But then you start realizing when you start headlining, like, oh yeah, it's not the same.
Right. Yeah.
The check drop still, like, every time I'm ready to handle it, I don't. I still
Uh,
screw it up.
yeah, that's a trouble for a lot of people when they
Yep.
headline. Yeah, that's it's hard to work through that. Now it looks I've watched a lot of your tape, and well, I watched a lot of your video. I'm old, but I watched a lot of those, and it looks like crowd work is a pretty common thing with you. Is that part of your act like all the time?
Uh, so I don't like to put a lot of the jokes that I'm still doing on stage online. So I
Mhm,
end up putting a lot of the crowd work. But I would say
mhm,
I typically work off a crowd energy, and
mhm,
sometimes to figure out what where that is, I go into the crowd.
mhm,
I try not to do a lot of crowd work. Sometimes it's just kind of, I would say it's you know, some shows it's a big part of the show, but other times, I remember the last few shows where I did in Florida, uh, I didn't do any crowd work. Uh,
mhm.
and then I was like 45 minutes into my set. I was like, wow, I'm almost done. Like,
Ah,
and I still needed to, do the last 10 minutes, and I had done almost everything in my set. And I never get to that level because I do so much crowd work. So
mhm. So you said that you do a lot of writing on stage. Can
yeah.
you walk me through that?
So my process, what I do before COVID I would write a outline of a joke, a premise, and kind of like a couple tags. And here's an example of like how I write. I'll write
Mhm,
an outline and then circle the bit, um, the name of the bit, and then just like have like a couple things that are going out of there. But then I work out the 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 beats on stage. So
mhm,
like if I have a joke about masks, like I have a new joke that I'm doing about wearing a mask. Sometimes I'll write it on Facebook and see how it does uh, as a status or a tweet. Um, and that doesn't really work for my style because I'm more of a storyteller anyway. But then I'll try it live on stage, and then I'll just work. I'll work. I'll The brain will just it'll be like free form thinking, and I'm recording all my sets to see where the laughs are. And
mm.
9 out of 10 of the times where I'm trying to get out of a joke, that pressure uh, gets me to a funny bit,
Uh-huh.
a closer or a funny beat, whatever it is. But that's how I write, and I try to do it on Zoom, but it's just a little harder.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually that's been my way of writing, and then I go back, listen to it, then I incorporate what I wrote on stage into actual writing it,
Mhm.
then I try it again, and then I try it again, and then I try it again, and then you cut out the fat, and you get a joke.
Right. So if you're doing 45 minutes, how much of that 45 would you say is working out new stuff?
Well, no, when I'm headlining, I try not to. Before COVID, I would never do. I would maybe do like maybe
Mhm.
4 minutes of new stuff in a 45-minute set.
Mm.
But now, because you don't have that stage time as much, I would say there's more of that. There's maybe 5, 10 minutes of new material. But what I would do before COVID was I'd write these ideas or the premises out. I'd go to Laugh Factory and Zanies here in Chicago, have these Tuesday shows where they're not paid spots. Sometimes they're paid spots, but you're just doing, 5-10 minutes,
Mhm.
working out stuff, and then do another show like an independent room on a Wednesday or Thursday, still work out those shows, work out the kinks, and then, that weekend, if I'm touring or if I'm doing a show somewhere, that's where I would get to the more polished level of a joke.
Mhm. Do
But it
you
was
wish?
a process.
Yeah, it is.
It's different now because, and I just wrote about this on my LinkedIn. I used to go up 7 to 10 times a week, and I had a system down where I could go to an open mic or even get some stage time on a show Monday through Wednesday,
Mhm.
and Tuesdays were the best because you can hit 2 or 3 comedy clubs in Chicago, crowded rooms, work out newer jokes. So by the weekend, you might have another, if not a full new joke, like new beats from an old joke
Right.
worked out. But now
And
you don't have that. We don't have that luxury,
no.
so uh, it's harder. It's
Yeah.
harder to write. For my style of writing, it's harder.
Right. I just think it's hard to write because you don't really have a lot to write about because there's not much life going on.
That's true too. But I also have had a lot of weird experiences that, if I were to have stage time, if things were opened up, I think I could get more stuff out there. But I'm still writing them all, the premises out. I try to write every day, but it hasn't been happening lately.
Yeah.
I mean,
Do you-
not writing jokes, but I'm writing other stuff too. So
right. Yeah, no doubt. Do you wish this? Because this is something I've always wished. I wish there was like a different level of open mic. Like, so when you first start out, 4 minutes is a very long time. Filling that with actual humor. I mean, people can stammer for
yeah,
4 minutes, but filling it with actual humor is a long time. So 4 or 5 minutes is a normal open mic. And then getting to that 10-minute mark is something that you can only really get to if you like maybe get a guest spot or you're on a showcase with a lot of comics or something like that. So I almost wish that there was like a 5, a 10, and a 15-minute open mic available, but I know it's not something that you could actually pull off, but it's hard to put together 20 minutes when you're only doing 5 at a time. It's hard to get the transitions and the tags right.
yeah. I mean, the shows that I was talking about, they weren't open mics, but they were like, there was an unspoken rule that if you're, depending on where you're on the room, like there'd be 10, like Tuesdays, for example, at Zanies in Rosemont, they have it's called the Tuesday 10 or 10 Tuesday. Um, the first half of the show was all comedians who are auditioning for Zanies, and the last 4 or 5 of us are established comics that we're working out our stuff. And we're all supposed to do 6 minutes, but sometimes if we wanted longer stuff, they would give it to you. They'd give you
Mhm.
10 minutes to work out stuff. So that was something similar to what you're talking about, where you get the longer sets.
Right.
Um, I have found that certain times where you're doing the guest spots, um, I treat those as like a 10 minutes of, okay, I'm going to do like 5 minutes of old stuff, 5 minutes of new stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so that's that. And then with the Zoom shows now too, if you're doing like a corporate gig, obviously you're doing your best material,
Mhm.
getting paid a lot of money. But if you're doing a show where it's like a showcase style Zoom show, your work, everyone is work in the same position. This is the
Mhm.
stage time we have. So we're
Right.
working out stuff, and people seem to understand it and be more forgiving.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's almost like they feel like they're on the inside of something, you know?
yeah,
They almost like they're part of the team.
absolutely.
Yeah, and that would be a good feeling for sure. You know, I like that, and I've had a few people, send me messages, saying, it was really cool watching you work that out and stuff. So that's pretty cool. It's not cool enough that I want it to keep going, but it's still cool.
When the first time I went back on stage for a real show in June after 3 months of not having shows, you catch yourself on stage where you're not, some of the stuff, there's a joke where you're like, oh, I was at a wedding this summer. And then you're like, well, you guys know that's not true.
Yeah.
They're already, they're already behind. And it's also like, it's kind of like a hack move that you didn't mean to do, but you catch yourself being like, well, that's not true. Like,
Yeah.
and then they're laughing too because they're like behind the wall, right? Because now they know, oh, this guy's been lying to us for the last 5 years with this joke about something that happened at a wedding last week
Yeah.
when we know it's not true. Like,
Yeah.
you just catch yourself. And then as you start doing more shows, when that part's coming up where you're like, I was at a wedding last summer,
Yeah.
there were no weddings last week.
Yeah. I actually caught myself. My opener is about looking like Harrison Ford, but cashier told me I look like an older Harrison Ford. So that's my opener because I get to talk about myself and how I'm younger than I look. And I did it, and I'm like, well, a cashier would never say that because I've got a mask on. I mean, all I can see is my
Right,
eyes.
right.
So I said it, and nobody called me on it. So, but I thought, yeah, it really doesn't fit here. And so I'm going to have to say last year I went into a
Yeah.
gas station.
There's a bunch of that stuff too. Yeah, and then even all the mask stuff or COVID stuff too. It'll be interesting how that changes things too. Because I had a joke about the COVID that was about the first half of COVID. Because now we're on like the third half or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
All the stuff that we all dealt with the first half of COVID, it's already like non-existent. So
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
different changes for the better, for worse. You gotta keep writing, and
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
makes you a better comic.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you because you're so ingrained in the Chicago scene. I mean, when I talk to people on the coast, New York, LA, a lot of them are moving to Chicago. First off, they were, at least they were last year.
When we were open, yeah.
Yeah, because it's Chicago's one of the most talked about scenes as far as comedy is concerned anywhere. So I'm sure it's very competitive, and there's a lot of people trying to get stage time. And you're already established because you've been doing it long enough. You've already got your contacts and stuff like that. Say, let's pretend that I am a pretty good feature. I'm a good enough feature, and I can give you a strong half hour, and I'm 25 years old, and um, I'm just moving to Chicago. What advice would you give somebody that is coming into such a densely populated comedy scene, and trying to succeed, trying to get some of that stage time?
Um, well, yeah. I mean, it was definitely a lot of people were moving here for a while when we were opened up. Um, I would just say just get up as much as you can, and people, if you're good, if you're doing something that's unique or that the clubs are going to need, you're going to get booked. But even if you don't get booked at the traditional comedy clubs, there's shows here every night.
Mhm.
Um, when I mean, hopefully they all come back, or most of them come back. Some of them may not, but if you work hard and you're nice to people, I think you're gonna do well.
Mm.
You just got to work hard, and they say networking or hanging out at the clubs helps. I never, I'm not a big drinker anymore, so I don't
Mhm.
really like to go out and get drunk on a weekday with those people, although that helps. I think that's all you can do is just do your shows and do your sets, and people will book you on shows. Even from being in Florida, I was in Florida for a couple of weeks, and I did as many shows as I could, and I got opportunities just by performing and doing.
Mhm.
I think people will know if you're in your hypothetical, you're a 25-year-old kid who's you know you're writing consistently and you're a good feature. That's People are going to need that. There's going to be a
Mhm.
role for you here. I mean, it is getting crowded. There are a lot of people that are looking for the same spot, so it is frustrating. I have noticed that uh, even the amount of shows that I'm getting booked on, or I used to get booked on, is a lot harder for me. So it's kind of funny because it used to be when I'm in town, it'd be really easy to get a show, but now
Hmm.
I have to like plan ahead. I'd be like, hey, I'm going to be in town for 2 weeks. Can I please, it used to be like it would be easier for me to get on a show, but now it's not as
Yeah.
easy. Um, yeah, I mean that's all I can say is I think there's a lot of opportunities here. And if you don't get shows, make your own show, make your own
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah.
That's what I did. That's what we were making our own shows from based on our success with the open mic, and then people started to notice us and
Mm.
as producers, and uh, we were able to generate crowds. I mean, it's all about crowds. If you can bring a crowd, if you have a draw, people are going to come
Right.
too.
I feel like that the business, especially if you own a club, if you own a club that's dedicated to comedy, it's gone completely to your merit as a comedian rather than who you know and
Yeah.
all the elbow rubbing and stuff like that. They need butts and seats, so they need somebody funny up there.
Well, there's two parts to that. There's obviously like the comedians who are just funny, but they just don't have a social media presence.
Hmm.
Those are, you know, it's hard for those kind of comics because they're probably some of my funniest friends are headliners, and they don't sell out rooms in certain cities,
Hmm.
but they're everyone knows who they are, everyone knows they crush. But there's also the internet sensations who have maybe 20 minutes of jokes, but they're selling out Wednesday night at Zanies or
Yeah.
whatever. But they you know Roy Wood Jr. he talked about it on, I think, Joe Rogan's podcast, where comedians were crapping on these guys, but they're the ones that are keeping the clubs open right now. Those
Right.
sensations, uh, and the clubs are doing a good job of booking them. And to be fair, like that's how I got booked on a lot of shows too. I wasn't an internet sensation, but there's certain markets where I had a draw, and
Hmm.
clubs would let me headline on a weeknight, and then
Hmm.
from there I'd feature on the weekend or end up working eventually as a headliner of that club. So there's that aspect of it too. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's all about getting butts in the seats, and then there's people that can do it, you know, without being funny.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
It's just it's just the market. It's a market that's generate. It's comedy is just one of those weird things that it'll be interesting to see how we react to COVID, because
Yeah.
it's the only field where we need live audiences bunched together.
Yeah.
I was a musician. You don't. Yes, concerts you need to have a crowd, but you don't need to have a crowd to do your art.
Right.
Musicians could play online. They can play, in a studio. Of course, concerts are the energy is there, but comedians can't do that. I mean, they
Hmm.
can, but it's not. It's definitely different watching, a live streaming Laugh Factory show on Instagram
Yeah.
where they don't have anyone in the crowd. You don't hear any laughs,
Yeah.
even though the guy is hilarious on stage,
Yeah.
or the comedian on stage is just crushing. No one's laughing at her or him. It's just kind of one of those things.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a new game because the YouTubers and the TikTokers and all that kind of stuff, I mean, they're doing their thing. So it's always, I think it's going to be a part of it going forward, and
Oh,
it's going
absolutely.
to morph into other stuff too. But you know, like you said, if they're keeping the art going, then let them do it.
Yeah, I mean those guys, those people, those internet guys or girls who are doing those shows, if they're helping the club stay open, you know, let them do it.
Yeah.
Those kind of shows, I think Roy Wood Jr. said it best, was like gives the opportunities for those clubs to book and develop headliners who maybe don't have that social media draw, but they are hilarious. And you
Right.
go to a show, or you book them on a weekend, uh, everyone that leaves that club is going to come back to Laugh Factory or Zanies or Wiley's, whatever
Mm,
club it is, because that guy was hilarious
right.
or girl.
Right. So almost everybody that's a comedian has a podcast now, but you've been doing the podcasting for a while. What got you started in the podcast biz?
So Singles Only was my first podcast. I did that initially to promote a show I had at the Laugh Factory called Singles Only, which is
Mm,
Drink Day Laugh, a show about dating. And Jamie Masada, the owner of the Laugh Factory, was pushing me to have a podcast. I was against it,
mm,
um, or not against it, but not excited about it at all. And
mm,
now it's, it's there's no more Singles Only show. It's a different show, but the
yeah.
podcast is still, we just recorded 200, I don't know, 240 episodes, something like that. So 230 some
Yeah,
episodes.
I think the last one I saw was like 238.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just recorded the ones that are coming out, and it's just like, it's insane. It took off, and I've learned a lot from it, and I've enjoyed it. It's developed my ability to interview people, which I love doing. And
Hmm.
so that one it just kind of took off, and it's opened a lot of doors for me and other opportunities. And then um, Make Us a Mixtape we started just over a year ago. Marty DeRosa and I. Marty DeRosa has been in the podcast game. He did Wrestling with Depression, which was super popular, and now
Yeah.
Marty and Sarah Loves Wrestling, and he's like the god. If there's a Chicago podcast Mount Rushmore, he's definitely on there.
Yeah.
Um, so we started our Make Us a Mixtape podcast just because we both love to talk about music and come from different backgrounds.
Mm,
Uh, yeah, that one's just kind of been for fun, and that's it's kind of taken its own. It's kind of fun not caring about, like, Singles podcast is work now for me because obviously I have sponsors. I have
yeah.
I have to keep it going, and Make Us a Mixtape is just kind of fun, and we try to keep it our weekly check-in, talk about whatever we're on our mind about music, having our friends on and make mixtapes. Everyone, you know, makes mixtapes, whether it's cassettes, CDs, or kids making playlists now. So
Yeah. I actually make playlists for my friends all the time,
yeah,
and I ask them what kind of music because I like a lot of music, so I always try to find the bands that they've never heard of and
yeah.
put them on, and so
When,
I love doing it. Yeah.
well, when we open up, we'll have you as a guest. We're gonna hopefully have guests again soon. So
Oh,
make
cool,
it a
cool.
mixtape. That's all you got to do.
Yeah,
I've
great.
said
Well, I can do that.
any topic, just be ready to talk about them.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. Uh,
Independent.
so you came up with a cool thing. I mean, being an attorney, you came up with a cool thing to do on stage, um, that was called Everyone's a Lawyer.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of those on YouTube, and I watched those. Where did that idea come from? Because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, another one of those things where I was told to. I created the show Singles Only, and Drink Day Laugh, which then became Drink Day Laugh, a show about dating, an interactive show where I
Mm.
hosted, and we were pitching that to network, and the producers came back to me and said they liked me as a host, but they didn't think the show could work, and they said create another show about something you know, and I know the law. So
Yeah.
what I did was I love game shows. I love competition. Even when I did my open mic, I made it a competition. So I came up with the idea of comedians a lot of comedians would come up to me and ask me stuff when I was practicing full time, and even this today they'll say stuff, and it was just funny to see these comedians who I had so like so funny and so smart not really know what lawyers do, or
Yeah.
people would talk about the law on Facebook, and you're just like, you don't know what you're talking about. And then I was like, it came to me like to have a show where I had comedians interpreting things that are happening with the law, and sometimes politics. And then
Uh,
it's just funny because it shows the different styles of comedians and how they approach uh, you know things like the law, things about crazy rules that have happened or crazy cases, or defending people that are impossible to defend.
Yeah.
Who better to explain to us, you know, why Donald Trump's Muslim ban should be legal
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
a Muslim comedian.
Right.
I mean, those are the kind of situations that we like to talk about. Things that are uncomfortable about the law or situation, and it's been so fun. The hardest part about that show for me as a host is sometimes I'm watching and forgetting that I have to run a show because the contestants are so funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I saw that and I thought that was a great idea. And, another way to do comedy and yet have it be different enough that it brings people in.
Yeah, we're pitching that right now to network. Well, I was on the process of that before COVID, where we had some meetings. We had to wait and see how it's going to go without a live audience. But
Yeah, that's a cool thing. Uh, I like to ask this question of just about everybody, and I don't ask you to name names or anything like that, but what's the best and worst piece of advice you got coming up?
oh man, uh, best advice I got was actually I'll say Tom Dreesen gave me a lot of great advice on hosting, how to be a good host.
Mm,
Uh, there were like 3 rules he gave me that I still share with people. Um, that was probably one of the best. A lot of bookers gave me great advice about running a show and hosting a show, which would be Tom and the other people that told me. It was just like do some crowd work, see where everyone's at, find out where the birthdays, where people are from, and then move on. Always end on a joke. Don't
mhm,
end on crowd work. Um, those are like kind of the best advices I got as a on how to be a good host. Um, keep the show going. Obviously, if things are going well, if a comedian does well, keep the show going. If a comedian ends rough, bring the crowd back. If the
mhm.
guy is does too well, bring the crowd back down to normal for the next comedian.
Yeah.
They're all like good advice things that I still pass on to people unsolicited sometimes.
Uh-huh.
I love watching hosts because that's an art form I think that doesn't get enough credit. It's an
Uh-huh.
excellent job. Um, bad advice. Shoot, I can't really think of any bad advice that stuck with me. Um, yeah, I don't remember any bad advice. I think if I had bad advice, I don't remember
Uh-huh.
it.
You came up on something that I talked to a lot of comics about, and I talked to people who are have worked a lot in the headliner area and the feature area. And when you're headlining, do you expect your feature to give it everything they've got, and try to be better than you, or
Yes.
do you want them to stay in their lane?
Uh, yes. Before I answer that, I did think of bad advice I got from people was to not worry about social media,
Oh, okay.
which is crazy. But it's to answer your other question. Yeah, I always when I can bring my own feature, I always bring a comedian who I think will make it impossible for like to keep up. So
Mhm.
the comedians that I've had open for me now um, on at comedy clubs, 2 of them have already been on Just for Laughs. One of them just won some huge contest, uh,
Uh-huh.
and those were people that I brought as features to clubs, and then they were always very thankful to me. And I always said, when you're huge, don't forget me. I want to come and open for you.
Yeah.
That's how I feature. Yeah, I
Uh,
always want them to crush. I always want to pick someone that or have someone that does a great job.
right, right. That's funny. A lot of the more old school, and I don't want to say old school, as old as Dreesen, but I'm talking like late 80s, early 90s. They expected the feature to stay in their lane. You can only bring them to here. And
I've heard that a lot.
yeah,
I've heard from a few comedians that did really well opening for bigger names. A lot of my friends,
Mm.
All of a sudden they weren't the opener anymore.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it happens more than you would expect.
Right. Yeah, and that it's funny. Some of the ones that I talk to and say they want the feature to really bring it and really push the boundaries and make it tough for them. Those are the ones that they've got a more unique act, and they don't really care who goes on before them because they're doing their thing anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny how that works, but I just it would be difficult for me if I was featuring if somebody told me to stay in my lane and not give it my all.
I've had the pleasure of being on tour with a lot of bigger names, and I always thought that they were picking me because I was an easy follow. So I used to say that all the
Uh-huh.
time. Like, I'm like, oh yeah. Everyone's like, they're like, oh, I heard you're opening for Demetri Martin. I'm like, yeah, it's because I'm an easy follow. But
Yeah.
that's not. I mean, I feel like certain comedians ask me to open because I think I have a different style than them, and I
Uh-huh.
also like I like to think that it's because I'm good, but we don't
Yeah.
know.
It's because you're good. Come on. Um, the last thing I like to talk about is, and I always put this in threes for some reason. What three things do you know now that you wish you would have known when you started?
Three things that I wish I knew back then. I wish I started when I was younger. I wish I started younger, and I also wish that I was recording all my sets from beginning.
Mm,
That's the biggest advice I think, and listening to my stuff. That's the hardest part. Um, so recording stuff, starting earlier, and getting up more.
mm,
I was getting up more back then because when I first started, I was only getting up once or twice a week, even though there was an opportunity to go up all the time.
mm,
So that's the one thing. And then I would also say uh, to enjoy the moment, enjoy it more, and appreciate the process. I think
mm.
people say that all the time, but you don't realize it until you're going in. There's no the one thing about comedy. There's no skipping. There's no skipping in line. Like everyone has to pay their dues. Some people move faster. Um, but yeah, I mean, those are the things that I think I wish I did, and be more patient, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny about recording because no matter how in the moment you are up when you're on stage, you miss things that are laughs, and you sometimes it's two sides of the coin. First of all, you think a joke you did completely bombed when it did okay. You just need to do it better.
Right.
And then you also think something totally killed, and it was really only those people up front that were laughing.
Two people laughing really
Yeah.
loud, like the whole room. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Um, yeah, I think that the way I write, especially, like I never realized for the first few years, like the only reason certain things I remembered it is because someone had recorded the show, and I was like, oh
Right.
yeah, I forgot about that
Yeah.
ever. So that's such a crucial part of the process for me, or for anyone that writes on stage, or you have that ability to see immediate feedback of
Mm.
what something is, and if it or positive or negative, if it works three times, it's a bit. If it
Yeah.
bombs three times, it's not going to work.
Yeah. So I gotta say that I know you're doing Zoom comedy because you are looking in the camera, and that's something I'm still having trouble
Yeah,
with.
it took a while to figure that out, but also I do the Zoom podcast now too, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah. I put you over here, so you're close to where the camera is, but I'm still looking at you instead of the camera, like you're sitting across from me. But it, I'm working on it, but it's tough. It's like, I mean, when you're doing it live, you're trying to pan the audience and stuff
sure.
like that, and you just can't do that. You got to look right in that stupid camera, that little tiny hole. Yeah,
Story of our lives.
yeah. Well, this has been great. Where can people find you if they want to find all your stuff?
My Instagram is Paul Farahvar. My name Farahvar, or on YouTube, it's just youtube.com/Paul F Comedy. Those are pretty much the best places to find me, or my website, Paul F Comedy as well. So,
Hmm. Yeah, that I
search
found.
for my
I
name.
think I found all your stuff from there, so that
Oh yeah,
that's a good hub.
yeah. My website has all my links to everything. PaulFcomedy.com.
Yeah,
Uh, and then if you try to spell my name wrong, you'll most of the time Google will be like, "Did you mean this?" So
yeah.
that's the luck of doing social media for a while.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. Well, this has been great. I learned a lot, and I'm glad we got to connect. And I have to tell the audience that I ghosted you for a while, but that's just because those Facebook messages just get
Yeah,
stacked up, and you forget to go back. And I
yeah,
went back one day, and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally stood you up.
that's okay. No, I think you reached out to me, and I was like, "Sure, what are the details?" And then I got busy too, so it all worked out.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Well, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Seriously, appreciate it. Good luck. Be safe out there.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for doing this. I
Oh,
stopped recording. Thanks for doing it.
yeah, it was awesome, man. It's fun.
Yeah, I really enjoy this podcast because I get to talk to people like you, and I'm really intrigued by the Chicago scene because I'm right by South Bend,
Okay.
so it's I see a lot of the Chicago folks and
Yeah,
a lot of
I just did Mishawaka. Is that by there?
yeah,
The
yeah, that's where I'm at. Did
okay.
you do the smokehouse or
Okay. I did it a couple times in the last
smokestack?
month.
Yeah,
Smokeback, yeah.
yeah,
I used to do that other club, the Drop, but then just the new owners just weren't booking me, and I was like, okay, that's weird.
yeah.
I headlined
There,
there. That's a club that I brought. I brought two features there, and then they brought those guys back,
yeah,
but then they didn't bring me. I was like, I actually had a really good show, but it was
yeah.
weird.
I know them, and
Heather, I think, is the only one I know. But,
yeah, and Jim's the other one, and he lives in Chicago. But
oh, does he?
that the restaurant where they had that club actually closed, so they're looking for a new spot. But they they've got a strange taste, and
Yeah,
I'm staying away from them pretty much
I,
now.
I figured they had like which is great that they were booking a lot of comics that were uh, progressive and stuff, but it just felt like I know that the audiences that were going to those shows were like Indiana,
Yep,
know, South Bend,
yep,
Indiana crew. And I was like, I don't see how this is going to work, but it's fine.
yeah. Well, I did a benefit show for a guy that's doing storytelling as a means of therapy, and he was just getting his nonprofit off the ground. And I did a showcase of people pretty much like me, and completely filled the place. They ran out of chairs, and nobody, and nobody. I don't think anybody said fuck the whole night. So it's funny. What puts butts in chairs and what you personally like, you got to kind of separate those things.
It was really, yeah, I really liked that venue. They were one of the first venues to headline me years ago. And I had a great, I had like food poisoning at one show. I call it my flu game, but like I had one of my best shows. And Avi Sanchez was my opener.
Ah, yeah,
And we were both like, that was crazy because we were staying at the hotel and I was puking right before the show. I was like, you might have to come back out because I don't think I'm going to do the whole set. And then
uh,
I just had like such a fun set. And, even recently there were people that were messaging me like, why haven't you been here? I was like, I don't know. Every time
yeah,
someone asks me, I'll email Heather but then COVID hits. So I was like, okay, whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know how that's gonna come
Yeah.
out. There's a couple hotels downtown that are looking at putting a room in, but I don't know how it's all going to work out for them.
There's a few other rooms I've been in touch with around that area about booking too. I don't remember their names, but
Yeah,
they'll reach out to me. So
Yeah, cool. Well, it was great talking to you. This
Thanks,
was
man. Yeah,
fun.
tell me where the link is for this stuff too, and I'll share it on my social media.
Yeah, yours will come out. The reason why I kind of ghosted you is because I won an award and these publicists started hitting me,
Oh,
and they wanted me to have like actors and stuff, and I don't do that. You have to have at least a background in stand up, but I mean, they stacked me with a bunch of old time stand ups, and so I was like doing interviews when I didn't want to be doing
sure. Yeah,
but you can't pass up the chance. So yours will probably come out probably maybe second week of January, something like that.
I'll share it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'll shoot you a message.
Awesome.
If you ever want any skinny on what's going on over here, let me know. I keep my ear to the ground. There's a couple places in Michigan I'm looking at just over the border to do some shows. I got a guy that wants to combine music and comedy and all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking at that when
Yeah, let me
everything
know.
opens
I'm always open to travel. I'm gonna be gone in Florida for like 3 or 4 weeks, but I'll be in Chicago, and I do have some shows in Michigan in February. So
Cool. Excellent.
awesome, man. Scott, thanks so
Hey,
much.
nice meeting you.
Likewise.
Have a
Cheers.
good one. Bye bye.